Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Saturday night here, October 18th. I won't get this video out till tomorrow, so I'm skipping a day. I produce content every day, and I don't remember the last time I didn't make a video. I didn't have a video up. Even today, I have 3 Journey Series videos for the members that I'm going to be making public, so that's like 6 hours of content. So everything that you're going to see in this video, I've already done. I'm going to get into stuff to do with Charlie Kirk and his wife's fake relationship, and some more weirdness with TPUSA. They rolled out that Chrisley girl, that nightmare Chrisley family with a gay dad who doesn't want to come out. And then him and his wife, were busted for tax fraud. They weren't political criminals. They were, reality TV show stars who were convicted of defrauding banks of $30 million in loans and then not paying taxes and all this other shit, right? And this Chrisley girl, apparently she was part of the Charlie Kirk crew. And I get into it here. I'll show you that. They're just desperate over there. And then I cover this Max Blumenthal interview about his recent article, which I didn't read, or the interview about it. And, he's talking about things that we've known in the truth community for a number of years about Israel's hold on the American government and the American media and television and, all this stuff, right? Politics and politicians. And, an upcoming second war with Iran and all these other things that are part of this whole deal. Kind of interesting. This is kind of a big video in different ways. He also talks about Charlie Kirk. And, he does research. I mean, there's people who really do very good research, very conventional research. And I don't really do that. I used to do it more, but I don't have to. All the things that I thought about Charlie Kirk when I first saw him, I think I talked about this in this video or the last video. But, I didn't know who Charlie Kirk really was. I heard his name a couple times. Somebody sent me a clip of him talking about how Jeffrey Epstein was maybe Mossad. So there was nothing in the video clip that I disagreed with. But I knew the guy was a real piece of shit. I just knew it because years of doing, meditation and my training as a counselor and just, I have some abilities in this area of reading people. My wife had different, she listens to and has different things that she sees on Reddit and other places. And they were talking about how great Charlie Kirk was. She has more connections to right-wing people. And she said, "Are you sure about this guy?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure." And everything that I've said about him over this time that I now know a lot more about him has come true because, it's like one of the things that I have an ability in, right? Also, when you do something for a job, you break into new levels that people, when they do something as a hobby, they just can't get there because the amount of time you put in, time and work, and you just know things people who are doing it as like a hobby farmer or something like that just doesn't know. So you'll hear I had a headache, it went away, but I had a 2-day headache. I haven't had a headache in about 6 weeks, so I've kind of got that more under control. But even with the headaches, I've been able to produce content, and I have these physical issues all the time now as being an older person. And I've just learned to just use my will force and ignore them and whatever it is. Staying in routine is really key for me. I produce more work on a daily basis. Aside from what I do here, I do farm work every day. I make meals. I do my spiritual practice, meditating, doing cleaning, and then, do the prayer for everybody, 9 p.m. prayer, and then some of these other things that I do. In terms of giving sittings and stuff for the Gratefullness meditation channel, I have, multiple channels. I only really post on 2, but I've done all these other things, right? And I'm kind of a slacker, but I produce quite a bit of work, accomplish quite a bit on a daily basis, right? Household chores and, things that people do. Farm stuff and other things, and I'm just, I'm older. I wish I had this kind of abilities. And one of the things that I can do here is I have eliminated drama from my existence. Drama just stops the work. And I just don't do drama anymore, and that's just been a real blessing. I mean, it's pretty much the happiest time in my life for that reason. A drama-free existence. You're always going to have issues, you're going to have problems, you're going to have whatever they are, but if you don't make them dramatic, if you just, it's just part of it. Like it's just, a good part of it. We have this thing, miseries as divine blessings, and make it part of the spiritual journey. It's just, you don't get sucked into some emotional bullshit and feeling sorry for yourself or concerned about whether something's rigged or fair and all these other things. And that's how I've been able to remain on YouTube all these years. YouTube is rigged against so many of us, not just truthers, but other people, independent people, and whatever category you get put in and all those other things. But, I'm able to crank out all this work, and YouTube wants you to produce a lot of content, and yet they punish you for the content. They don't recommend content that, when you post a lot of content, they don't recommend all of it to the people who might want to watch it. I don't expect people to watch every minute of all the stuff that I do, but I make it available to people when they have the opportunity and these things. It could be overwhelming trying to keep up. But in terms of the YouTube algorithms, if you don't watch a full video, they think you're disinterested, especially if they've already labeled a channel a problem child channel, and so they work against you. I've been wanting to take like some days off and time off. I keep on talking about that just as a way to help get more recommendations and more views on my videos, let people get a break, these things. But it just doesn't happen because there's always something to talk about. And I wake up and I look at the computer and I see what's going on. I turn the news on for a little bit when I'm eating breakfast, and there's always something to talk about, and I have the time to do it. And I've often felt like being in routine is so important, especially as you get older. And sticking to that routine is kind of essential. Because I notice that like I'm able to exercise and do certain things as long as I'm in the routine. But as soon as I break from the routine, it really is hard to get back into it. If I travel or if something happens, I get sick and I'm not able to keep up with it, like any number of things that I do. And so it's easy to keep it going when you do it every day. But there's always issues to overcome physically, especially as you get older. Like I had a few like leg things. I had these shoulder issues. I was having trouble sleeping because both shoulders would hurt when I turned on one side or the other, and then kind of got those worked out. And then I had some issues, just leg issues, and eventually something happened to my calf, and that was strained. And then I must have been overcompensating, so I tweaked my knee, my other knee, my right knee, my left calf, my right knee, and then my right calf started hurting. And, I had to do all these things, stretching and trying to keep going. Yeah, I walk about 5 to 10 miles a day, somewhere in there, depending on as the light dims. But in the summer it's more, and I'm outside doing work and all these things. And, I had to limp around. We still went for walks, but I had to reduce the amount of time. And then you break away from it. It's hard to get going again, especially as you get older. You start losing things. If you don't keep up with it, you fall into some old guy abyss and you just can't crawl back out of it. And so like just keeping going and, ignoring these things as best you can and working around them and keeping a routine becomes essential. Anyway, so that's my stuff. I have another introduction thing, or kind of a funny story where I yell at some protesters. I was in a kind of a mood today. And then the rest of the video will follow. So here it is. Okay, not greetings, brothers, sisters. This is going to be towards the end of the video. Maybe it'll be the beginning. Greetings, brothers and sisters. I did a comment voiceover on Thursday. Today's Saturday. Probably not going to get this video out today. I don't feel like editing it. I had a migraine yesterday. I haven't had a migraine like 6 weeks. And so I had one from just uncontrollable circumstances, but I think my migraine days are, I've kind of got it under control. But anyways, I had one yesterday. It wasn't that bad, but I had it throughout the night. I woke up and it was still there this morning, and I had to go cut the lawn, and I had to do some, I had to cut the trails. We have these trails with the lawnmower, and it, it didn't help. It's just loud. But anyways, I feel low energy. I'm going to take a nap now and maybe take a cold bath and see if that helps in terms of migraine's gone, but I just feel low energy. But anyways, so I just want to tell these two funny stories. So when I get migraine headaches, often anger is a part of it. Like it's when I'm most susceptible to getting angry, and I'm just irritable in general, and I just don't want to deal with anything. And so my wife and I were going into town, and we were going to get some lunch to go and do some shopping. And I get also grumpy when I don't eat. Like I have like the fastest metabolism you can have, based in some blood work that was done. And somehow I didn't remember this, but my wife and my daughter did. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because I often get hungry and I get sort of I get hangry, and so I got a little bit of migraine and I'm hungry and we're trying to go get lunch, and we see that there's something going on in the town, and we think it's some kind of Oktoberfest or some shit. And we look up, it's a protest. It's this bullshit No Kings protest. And I live in a Republican state, very Republican state. No chance of it going Democrat. And a Republican leaning city, 66% Republican, 63% Democrat. And the rest is other, right? Of all the registered voters. Zero chance of ever persuading anybody in this town that has no political power, no pull, no anything. It has just insignificant. And you guys know how I feel about protests. And so years and years ago, I was working at this treatment center. I have a master's degree in counseling. And I was working at this treatment center with sex offenders, teenage sex offenders. It was a shitty job in the middle of nowhere in Massachusetts, where, there's a term called the mass holes. My nephew told me about. He played basketball at some Division II school in Massachusetts, and he was around these guys, and he called them mass holes. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's totally it. And so there's a reason they call people from Massachusetts mass holes. It's not 100%, but there's plenty of mass holes out there. And I work with some of them. And I went for my job that was out in the sticks, where there's a lot of just rural. There used to be some kind of a plant there, some laborer plant, and these guys who were, not educated and not into therapy, in fact against therapy, worked at this treatment center. It was a nightmare place. It was just completely fucked up. And it was a very stressful job. I've talked about in many different videos. My boss, who was in charge of the counseling department, got migraine so bad she was taking opiates, and it still wasn't helping, right? So, it was just a really stressful place. And, I lived above a cockroach-infested apartment, and we had 5 kids at the time, two from my ex's previous marriage, and 3 kids, and eventually a 4th one was born. A 6th one was born. 4 of them were mine, and it was a cockroach-infested apartment in a college town, in a college building, where a lot of our neighbors were usually either people from a foreign country that cooked very like a variety of different not smelling great foods, or college kids that would jump up and down in our ceilings and shit when they were partying. And so it was like that. So it was a really bad time, stressful. I worked, stressful job. My ex was kind of losing it. She had all these, she was a sexual and a physical and emotional abuse survivor from her parents, victim, because she was a victim. Someone who was, loved to be a victim, and just, it was stressful. And I'm driving home, and 1 or 2 of my kids are sick, and I'm kind of rushing home, stressed out. And there were these dopey because I lived in a 5 college town that was right where University of Massachusetts was, and there's other colleges in this area. It's called the 5 college area. Smith College, that has, it's a women's college that has the biggest percentages of lesbians in universities, I think, something like that. And there's 3 other colleges there, but UMass is the big one. And I'm driving through the center of Amherst, and they're protesting the Iraq War, which everybody there was liberal. Everyone in that fucking town in that area is 80% liberal, in a liberal state, a democratic fucking state. And they're protesting the Iraq War. And it's a bunch of fucking stupid ass college kids, dumb fuck college kids. And they're, holding their fucking signs up and laughing and giggling and fucking just being douches. And I can't get home because they're blocking my way. I have to sit in traffic for 30 minutes in a town that's fucking one of these small ass towns, right? And I'm just, furious because I have real problems, and they're not going to do shit. Protests are fucking stupid. They never fucking work. They only work if the powers that be are using the protests to achieve some end for themselves, so that they can crush the protest or whatever. But they don't work for the people who are mad about something, right? because they don't care if you're mad. They don't give a shit as long as you don't rise up like a fucking mob, and go all ape shit on them. They do not care about what happens to you. We know that. That's why they call them the so-called elite. Why I call the controllers. They do not care about you at all, and they're not listening to your protests. They know you're mad. They know that people get mad every once in a while, and the protests are just a way for people to build community. But the other part is you never convince anybody of anything, right? So we're driving through this No Kings fucking protests. It's irritating me, and my wife starts reading the signs, and they're about Trump, and some of them are good about it. Some of them are things that we agree on. And it says honk if you support us. And my wife honks. I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, they have some good signs. And I'm like, my wife is much more of an anti-left person than I am. And so I go, these are the same people that want to put drag queens in freaking libraries. And she goes, well, you had to roll out the drag queen card. I'm like, don't support them. These are these moronic liberal people, and they're blocking the fucking town. And then we're going to take a right, and every time the light goes green, they run across the intersection. And it's right in the center of fucking town. And they're blocking everybody. They're slowing everything down. And I just roll down my window. I'm just, I don't interact with people. It might sound like I, call people dumb fucks, and I'm very confrontational, but I'm not. I don't want a relationship with people. I'm not trying to, any kind of, even a negative relationship is a relationship. I'm not trying to connect with other people. I'm not sharing my opinions with them. I just smile. I'm very polite. I'm not very social. I'm a socially awkward person. And so I roll down my window and I'm like, this is fucking pointless. Protests don't fucking work. I'm kind of shouting. You're inconveniencing us. We're going somewhere. People got things to do. You're not changing anybody's fucking mind, right? You ever been on the internet, right? You ever try to talk to a Republican, a Trumper? You ever talk to a Trumper? You guys, I'm sure you have, because you're either married to one or your fucking relatives, the ones that you no longer go to Thanksgiving. Everyone has a Trumper in their life, all these people. They live in a place that's 66% Republican. And so I'm just fucking letting into them. I'm swearing. And there's a bunch of people in front of me. And there's just one woman right in front of me. And she's smiling at me, waving her sign. And her daughter's looking at me like, why are you yelling at my mom? And I'm just like, this fucking doesn't fucking work. It would have been okay if they didn't walk in front of our intersection. There's a guy trying to turn right, and he's beeping at people. Not because he's supporting them, but everyone thinks he's beeping them because he's supporting them. And he can't take a right because a bunch of these people ran across the street. And I'm like, fucking, you're pointless. Your fucking existence is pointless. You think you're actually changing something? You've never been on the internet. You've never had an argument with a fucking Trumper on the internet or in your life. You never once talked to a Trumper about any of these things. You think waving a sign and standing up there with a bunch of other fucking dopes and you're going to change people's opinions? You're just pissing people off. And I said, you're just pissing people off. So we got lunch and we did some other shopping. We were going to pick up a pizza to have for dinner tonight because, whatever, I didn't feel like cooking, and I'll make a salad. But, and we went to the pizza place, which is usually busy. And it's 2 o'clock, it's later. It's at a time where there's not many people. And there's an old guy in front of me wearing a black suit. Well, first we're driving, and there's a cop driving on the other side of the road, and he's being followed by a funeral procession. And I was just about to say to my wife, roll down your window. I want to tell him how pointless funerals are. How corpses, the body. And because I was joking about what I had done earlier. But before I said that, she pretended to yell out the window. She said funerals are pointless. And we had we don't go out to this place very much, town, but there's a place that has pretty healthy food, and I had this thought, I wonder if the place is closed, which is weird because they're always busy. It's right in the middle of the city, a small city. And it's right next to City Hall. And when I called that, they had a different name, which they had 2 stores. They had one that made food to go, frozen foods, and they had other stuff that was these sandwiches and wraps. And they have 2 good wraps that I like. One's a Philly cheesesteak, and the other thing's a Southwest chicken wrap. And they say, no, the other place is closed, but they just have this thing called the bodega. And because they answered it, the bodega, and I'm like, fuck, what's going on here? and it's farther away, and it was just, and they didn't have the two things I like, and I got something that wasn't so good. The chicken was dry, which was kind of a bummer. And I went up and I picked up the food, and the woman said, I asked her, what happened to the other place, and she said the city had taken over the place, taken the land from the people. They had all these city workers that were always in there eating. It was always packed, right? And I was like, and she said, then I'm leaving, nice lady. And she's like, that's progress for you. So anyways, I go to pick up the pizza, and there's this guy in a suit, and he's got white hair. He's probably in his 70s. And I'm like, dude, it's fucking Saturday, and why are you wearing a suit in this fucking pizza place, right? And he's talking with this girl, and they're really chatty. And I can see my pizzas. My wife had ordered the pizza, and I didn't know, but it was already paid for, so all I had to do was get it and go. But he's talking, and then I can't only half getting what they're saying. Well, first he said what his name was, and the girl goes, that's my boyfriend's name. I'm like, oh, fuck. This is going to be a nightmare. Like, I dislike this kind of stuff, right? And they talk for a long time, and then she finally says, what can I get for you? And I'm like, holy shit. Like, they've been sitting here for 5 minutes. I've made eye contact a bunch of times. And I'm like, all I have to do is grab my pizza. You guys can fucking chat. You can visit all you want, not like on my time, right? And then he orders, and still takes way too long, the whole exchange. And, and I don't say anything, but I could have. Like, I'm at the point where I'm just like, why are you wearing a fucking black suit in this fucking hot day in October on Sunday, on a Saturday in a pizza place? What could you possibly be doing in a suit today? And what are you guys talking about when you're inconvenience people behind you, right? And so I get back to the car, and my wife's like, what happened? And I'm like, I almost lost it in there. This is in the Sajmark system, the meditation I do, it's called cleaning. When things like that come up, I'm in pretty good spirits now, though, because the headache's kind of gone away, and I feel better. But anyway, so there'll be I did a kind of a funny comment section at the end of this video, and we're going to get into some stuff with Erika, Kirk, and Turning Point. But here's the rest of the video. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today's Saturday, whatever it is, 18th, I think, of October, 2025. So Erika J. Kirk, I want to get into some stuff with Max Blumenthal, but she comes here to the ceremony here. If she comes here to Turning Point USA, I got a few Turning Point things, and then we'll get to some Max Blumenthal revelations about Trump being owned by Israel, which should be pretty obvious to everybody by this point. But he part
of our Turning Point USA family, but I want you guys all to see the Medal of Freedom and be able to look at it in the back of it. You guys are all part of the legacy.
You guys are all part of it, right?
On the back, it's the first and last time I put a cross on it.
It's the first and last time I put a cross on it. I don't even know what that means. Did she make a finger cross with her finger? Like she wrote out like a cross?
Yeah, you guys. I literally will stand here so all of you guys.
I will literally stand here for all you guys to see it. Now she's joking around. There's no dabbing her eyes. Like, wouldn't this be a moment that made her sad? Like she's showing the big medal of freedom she got. Like that, these medals are all goofy. It means nothing, especially like with some of the people who've gotten them. It's not a real thing. But it's what they do for. Oftentimes Trump will give his, like Miriam Edelson and these people give him $100 million. To support Israel, then I'll give him a Medal of Freedom, right? These people with dual citizenship and all that stuff. And then all the horrible people, celebrities and all of it. But, it's big for her. It means something to them. And I don't think she has much of a relationship with the staff here, but who knows. But she comes in and she's not crying at all. Like, there's no tears. She's not crying. Like, she's not sad unless she's on stage. You see her smiling and getting in and out of the car. Like before she came in, she got out of the car smiling and joking around. And then afterwards, when she comes here, same thing. Still wearing black, like he's, you know.
I'm not, I don't care. Everyone can have their moment and see.
Everyone can have their moment and see here. Let's video.
Thank you.
So again, not sad, not showing any kind of real loss of a beloved person in your life, right? Real grief. I mean, it's performative. You know, like let's say they're really married. They're really married, and she really loved him. She decided to perform, right? Like she decided to, you know, like fake it, like whatever this bullshit thing she does. Like she has this thing that she does in real life, which is smile and act like nothing's happened. Then she goes and dabs her eyes and does these things. And it's amazing that people look at this and think it's real, or they just want it to be fake. And they're happy with it being fake, whatever. Like it's just, you know, those are your choices. But like everyone else can see it, that's just totally performative. Because it's a hack job. Like it's not believable. Like, you know, it's fake as fuck, right? So anyways. So the title of this one is Why This Birthday Speech Touched So Many Hearts. And then there was another line there that said, this was the moment that drove everyone to tears. Right? You know, she's wearing this sheer, the sleeves. I mean, to me, it's more like, you know, this is high fashion. And it's, you know, anything that's sheer has a, like, sexual content. Right? Like it's, you know, like it's see-through. It's more like freaking lingerie than it is. You know, it's not some, like, drab, you know, Mormon or what are they? The Amish or somebody wearing some drab black dress, right? It just, you know, this trying to be. It's like a fluffy kind of. She wears shit like this anyway. You know, everything that they do is picked. Like everything that they, especially her, the outfits they wear, everything is calculated. And you know, wearing something drab that doesn't stand out. You know, something just, you know, business-like or whatever. Anyways.
And he preferred quiet birthdays. But that never stopped me from telling him. I told him every single year. I said, baby.
Baby. I said, baby. Baby. It's always weird when people call their significant others baby. Right?
I love your birthday.
I do. I love it. Why do you love it? Why do you love it, Erika?
I said, because it's the day that God knew the world couldn't go another day without you.
Yeah, that's not real. I mean, that would mean everybody. Like, you know, they trying to make this guy special. When we get into stuff with Max Blumenthal, you know, how much he was owned and created by Israel. I mean, it was just, you know, it's a manufactured movement. It was contrived. You know, it's not a real thing. Like, it didn't happen organically. It's when you got that much money, you can make yourself into a popular or whatever. Like, he did enough so that they would give him the money, that they invested in him. Whatever he did to win them over, to show that he had, you know, he would shamelessly promote Israel in a way that, you know, maybe no one else would, or he had a business plan that they saw that they could use going to college campuses to combat the people waking up to Israel's parasitic relationship with the United States, right? So, like, you know, this whole thing that's happened. Whoever it was, you know, everything after that was, when you have a lot of money to throw at it, you can make yourself into some popular whatever it is, but it's not like he had a good thing, right? He wasn't a saint. He wasn't a spiritual person. And just this whole thing is all fake.
I asked our daughter what she would like to say to Daddy for his birthday.
So these were two moments I mocked the most, maybe, when we were talking about how fake they were. In this video, the person's saying this is what touched people's hearts. You know, and it's people who know this is fake but go along with it. Like it's like people, it's the WWE of life. You know, where people want the performance. This is what they expect out of people. They expect fakeness. They expect these things. They celebrate it. You know, if she didn't do this, they can criticize her. You know, these people, these fake Christians or fake godly people. who need this kind of performative bullshit because it's all ritual. It's all, like they don't believe that people can be sincere or authentic. They don't get, this kind of content, like where people are talking about things in a real way, like how people actually think and feel, saying what you actually think and feel, expressing honesty from what's going on within, and not just on an egotistical level, but on a deeper level, right? Because you have multiple reactions. And with the big moments in your life, they're the things that are, not just the day-to-day routine. You have like bigger reactions, right? You have like there's multi layers to it. Somebody, a loved one dies, it takes years to really unpack that, like what that you feel about that person, and everything changes once the person's dead, right? Just like, you no longer have if it's a positive relationship, you no longer have that time with the person. And then, you appreciate them more. Like I said, the distance of love, the pain of separation, the pain of the separation from the beloved, right? So, you take some time to process, like even if you have a shitty relationship with your parents, it takes some time to process that, right? And it doesn't have to be something where you're thinking about every day, but there's stuff going on inside of you. And then, like, things start to come out and whatever it is. Like it's a feeling thing. It's not something you can control. But when you're just performing...
Babe.
Excuse me, I can't do it. I can't can't step it up. We know that afterwards and before, she's not crying at all. Like, this is her crying time. This is her performance.
She said, "Happy birthday, Daddy. I want to give you a stuffed animal." "I want you to eat a cupcake with ice cream, and I want you to go have a birthday surprise."
Oh, surprise. Well, he already has his birthday surprise. Jesus Christ. It's just so fucking fake. Anyway, so that's number one. So this video clip came up. Here they are. She's pretty much ignoring Nusha. So I don't know what happened there, but she mentions her a lot, how great she is. But they don't really have a good relationship. She kind of blows her off in this thing.
In heaven, as I said, on the day that he was assassinated, Charlie Kirk was a martyr for truth and for freedom.
Okay, from truth. He got paid shekels to push lies from Israel. And which is, it's like a traitorous act. It affects every taxpayer. It affects, people of Palestine. It affects all this stuff. The dysfunctional relationship between, the parasitic relationship between Israel and America, right?
So we hold his memory in our hearts forever.
Forever we do. Forever. We can't. The music's going to screw me over here with the copyright. There she is, looking up to heaven. Where are you, Charlie? Are you up there? I can't see you through the firmament. Here, look, the thing. There's a medal. There's Trump's hair blowing in the wind. Look at this thing. Looking back at Trump. He loved you, Trump. Yeah, he did. It's just fake. So the night of that so-called funeral, that they're calling this funeral, that big gaudy thing, at that stadium, where she was all over him and threw up the devil's horns and all that stuff, or I love you, and in sign language, whatever you want to think about it. She was all over Trump, right? Hugging him and groping him and grabbing his crotch. She was just all over him. And this time they gave her a memo not to do that, right? So she did a thing, and she dabbed her tears, and then like a little bit of but it's they told us, and again, this sheer thing that she's wearing, right? It's not, but it's not like she's not falling into his arms and doing all that thing, right? He's like, all right, let's tone it down this time, and it kind of pushes her away there. But like she definitely, there was a memo, there's some kind of exchange there, right? For all that. And she's gone, and Trump's off by himself. When he called her back on stage, it's a completely different vibe this time. Like there was some exchange of, all right, this is what we want from you. like just all the stagecraft, right? Okay. So this popped up on my YouTube feed. TPSU presents this Turning Point live event with Savannah, Guthrie, Russell Brand, and more. I don't know where Russell Brand is unless it's a different Russell Brand, because I looked through it and I couldn't find him. But when it was on, it only had like 900 views at first. Like it came on live. And then it was on like 2,000 views or whatever. When it was live. Like it didn't get above that in terms of what I was seeing. I checked it a couple times. And it says they have 86,000 views, but they have 211 comments, which that's just not enough comments for that many views, right? So I think they're buying views, and I think they've been probably doing that quite often. So they're inflating their view count. So they don't really have a following. And let's go to this thing with Savannah Chrisley.
Please welcome Savannah Chrisley.
They have quite a turnout for this. Now she's on that reality show with the... Okay, so I'm editing this, right? But Savannah Chrisley, this is Sunday, October 19th, my headache came and went, and I had a Nora. I woke up with a Nora, which is a whole weird thing, which I'll talk about in my next video, which I'm already starting to make. But I want to edit this one and get it out. But anyways, she's the headliner. She's the closer, right? So I don't know if Russell Brand said some things or he didn't show up or what happened with that. And maybe, that's out there somewhere on the internet. I'm not going to search for it because I don't care about Russell Brand, but it would be funny to listen to him. But they're quite different people. But she's the headliner, right? She's the closer. And she comes into a packed house in Oklahoma. They play this weird music, and she's really stupid and really obnoxious. And all she has is that bogus reality show with her criminal parents and her, gay dad, or, closeted gay dad, whatever. It's a weird thing. But just because she's famous, they give her some sort of, she's got nothing to say. She's got no value. She has, there's nothing, she's not a good public speaker. She's not insightful. They're very superficial people over there. It's a weird show. I saw little clips of it before. The bottom fell out for the family. But anyways, here it is.
What a day.
What a day. It's such a day. Woo!
Before I start, I just want to thank the University of Oklahoma for the warm welcome. The signs, the posters, the trash cans with my face in them. They're all beautiful. So
Boom.
I've never felt so popular and recycled at the same time.
Boom. What an amazing joke.
But, seriously.
Seriously. That's enough of these great jokes. Let's move into something serious.
Guys, I love...
Text merch to 1776 to receive a link to our official TPSU merch store. It's dropping the double sixes here.
that you care enough to have an opinion. That's what freedom looks like.
That's what freedom looks like. You know what freedom looks like? It looks like this. It looks like this. Freedom looks like.
And before I get started, this is a little bittersweet for me.
It's all bittersweet for me. Bittersweet. It's kind of sweet and bitter at the same time. Like it's sweet, but then bitter, and then sweet again, and then bitter, and then maybe sweet at the... I don't know.
When I got the email to come on tour, I was like a little kid on Christmas morning. I had gotten
Little kid on Christmas morning with my present of bittersweetness.
to meet Charlie a few times, and the interactions I had with him changed my life.
Changed my life for the better.
He gave me a voice when no one else would.
Nobody else would. I had a couple of felon parents. One of my dad is obviously gay. You ever see that? Like, if you ever seen this show, I covered it a long, long time ago. And I was like, oh my God, this guy is so gay. Like, he's so gay, right? Her dad. It was a weird family. And they had a weird, gaudy show for, like, really stupid people. And, apparently there are a lot of young people in Oklahoma that are into it. And then his I just looked when reviewed it. His wife and him got busted for defrauding banks a number of banks out of $30 million. And then tax evasion on top of it. And they were serving 12 years in prison. And, it was real crimes and not some kind of bullshit targeting. And this girl went to work for Charlie Kirk, I guess. I didn't know what Charlie Kirk was at the time, but I knew of this. And she got it. She campaigned for Trump, really worked it, was a big part of this whole thing, this movement, a youth movement. And Trump gave her parents a pardon they didn't deserve. These are, elitist criminals, reality TV stars, whatever they do. And so he pardoned them of something that was a real crime, right? And, this is Charlie Kirk was promoting this bullshit, and TPSU was still doing it, right? Like, so they're not anything. They're not even good politically, certainly not spiritual. It's not fucking... You think Jesus would be on the side of these fucking bank frauders, right? These money counters, their shekels, and
I was like, oh my gosh, yes. They're like, we want Savannah to open for Charlie. I was like, wait, what? I was freaking out. And then the unthinkable happened. And I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to cope with it. And I know all of you guys are kind of in that same place right now. It's hard.
It's really hard. It's so hard to cope with this guy. I mean, who's going to take all the shekels now? I guess we could all get some more shekels.
It's hard when we have so many people spewing hateful rhetoric. And I'm dealing with that right now at my little sister's school, Lipscomb Academy in Nashville.
Why in the world would you tell the possible haters about your sister's school? if she's already receiving hate there, why?
14 boys wanted to wear a red tie to honor Charlie. And this is a Church of Christ school. And they were forced to take it off because it was a dress code violation.
Yeah, that sounds like, kind of school it is. It's a dress code. I mean, yeah, it doesn't sound like that's hate. That's not liberal hate. That's dress code.
And that's all because there are Democrats from the top down running this school. And these kids are now suffering because they...
They're so suffering. There are Democrats running this school. Why are you sending your sister there? Like, is a Christian academy run by Democrats? Kind of fucking,
didn't get the chance to honor Charlie how he should have been honored.
Exactly, with red ties. Like, if they wore that would have changed everything if they wore those red ties.
But
What were the girls going to wear?
I want to be real with you.
Well, thanks. Be real. Well, I'm going to be real.
I have been in a really low place, and I feel like a lot of people are afraid to say that they're not okay. And I think it's okay to not be okay.
It's totally okay not be okay. It's totally okay not be okay. It's totally okay to be not okay.
All the time.
All the time. You have to be okay all the time. Sometimes you're not okay. Someone says, how you doing? I'm not okay. Don't think I'm okay. I'm not okay all the time.
I've been in the kind of place where you start to wonder,
Where you wonder? Are my parents criminals? Do you guys commit bank fraud? I mean, where's my Kleenex? I got to dab my eye.
my voice even matter? Is what I'm doing working? Am I really making a difference? And last night, God reminded me that he still sees me, and he sent me a note.
He sent me a note.
This note right here was given to me at a restaurant last night in Nashville.
By God.
At dinner, two strangers, Scott and Jet.
And one of them was God. I don't know. I think it was Scott.
I'll meet you guys someday. Handed the server a handwritten note, and it said, "Thank you for standing up for your family and our beliefs. God
Boom.
bless."
This guy got a note from God. Scott and Jeff delivered it. They were the vessels for God's wonderful note. Woo! Scott and Jeff. Scott and Jeff rule.
And then they quietly paid for my meal. And if you know me, you know I love food. So that was an expensive dinner.
Yeah, we know.
They had
You're a purger.
no idea, though, how much I needed that just in that moment. Because when you're fighting for truth, sometimes it feels lonely. But
Exactly. When you're trying to get your convicted parents out of jail, and then you're trying to get them a pardon they don't deserve, it's like so hard on you. It's gonna be very hard.
simple act reminded me God still speaks, sometimes through thunder, but also through handwritten reminders that you're seen and still called. That card reminded me that this fight is never about fame or applause. It's about faithfulness.
Exactly. Well, I like the fame and the applause. Those don't stop those things.
It's about people who still believe, who still choose courage when fear is easier. There are moments when you don't know where to turn, when the money's not there, when the courage
The
is
shekels are drying up.
gone, when you feel completely unseen. But what you do have is conviction. And conviction is enough for God to move mountains.
It moves mountains. Conviction can move mountains. It just can't stop bullets. It can raise mountains, but look at this thing. What's happening there? Lollipop Kid's mouth there. We are the Lollipop Kids, the other thing. The Lollipop Guild. So faith can move mountains, but it can't stop bullets. It can stop them from coming out like a miracle bullet, but not going in.
Almost 3 years ago, for people that
Almost 3 years ago.
don't know my story, my world was shattered. My parents, my absolute best friends, my co-workers, my everything. My dad knows more about his daughter's relationships than he ever should.
You ask me weird questions about my boyfriends, and are they into three-way
My parents, they
with the ads?
were taken from our home and sent to prison for a combined 19 years.
Boo.
And unfortunately, it wasn't just a headline, it was my life. Suddenly, I became mom, dad, sister, protector, caregiver, all at once. And I had to do it while cameras and critics picked me apart.
They come picking me apart.
I was angry at the system, angry at the people who lied, and honestly, I was angry at God.
Say, great God, why would you let my parents defraud the banks out of $30 million and get caught?
But then, as God would do it, I felt like he spoke to me again and said, Savannah, you can't fight evil with anger. You fight it with truth, and you win it with love. That night, I learned something. And this is a hard lesson for me, because for people that know me, I can be a little tough around the edges. But I learned something. I can be strong and still be soft. I can be bold and still be kind. I can be feminine and still be fearless.
I can tuck my penis.
Because femininity isn't a weakness. It's divine design.
Woo!
I know.
How's that applause worthy?
Woman's pretty cool, right?
Being a woman's pretty cool, right?
If only everyone knew, the difference between a man and a woman. But ladies, this one's
We do know the difference between bank frauders and regular people.
for you, because I had to learn this lesson. You don't have to become hard to be powerful. You can be gentle and still lead armies. You can cry and still conquer. That's what godly womanhood looks like. After one of my speeches...
All right, that's enough of that. Russell Brand, I searched, it didn't show up. I mean, unless they didn't include it here, because it ends with her, and he didn't come before her. They should have brought a video in before. There's her. There's this guy.
Stand and please take out your camera lights.
Oh my God, who's that fucking guy? That's not Russell Brand, is it? He's gonna make her. So there's all these other people, but none of them are Russell Brand. So they either cut him out or, you know, oh, is this him here? No, this girl's singing.
Is that cool?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I know that you know it, so don't worry. This is not a test. I mean, it's a little bit of a test, but I know that you know it. If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life.
Boom. I don't know this song. I haven't heard it recently.
And I had to start again with just my children and my wife.
Boom. Yes, bring it.
I thank my lucky stars to be living here today.
Yes.
'Cause the flag still
it.
stands for freedom, and they can't take that away.
This is so icky, this fake patriotic, fake Christian bullshit. Look, they got all these Charlie Kirk
All
shit.
chapters, you are on the front lines of
Where are these guys here?
over themselves.
I used to be a Bernie Sanders supporter. It was one of your videos that really woke me up, and you're an inspiration. Wow. Awesome, thank you.
You are why I do what I do.
So
Boom, you are, bro.
you leaning?
Now that and the shekels. The shekels that I get.
Can I get a hat? That's a good answer.
be welcoming. Even if people have different viewpoints, be open. You guys on the front line, starting Turning Point USA high school chapters, starting Turning Point USA
Let's look at going.
college chapters, you are on the front lines of saving this country.
Exactly, the shekels, the shekels. All right, let's get into the stuff with the shekels and where he was getting them and how much it meant to him. Okay, so I want to get to that stuff, whatever that guy named Blumenthal did, is it? We'll see in a second. I'll get to his name because I have the video up. Really good stuff. I covered a little bit what he said before about Trump being owned by Israel and stuff with Charlie Kirk and things. This video popped up, and I have another one I want to show you.
Our crisis with young people that's happening. See, what colleges do, and what they should do, but they don't, colleges should say, my goodness, what an awful, broken, chaotic world that we have. I'm going to try to make you stronger so that you can endure the suffering better, that you can straighten out your path, that you can have stronger shoulders, that you can bear the burden, and then you'll be more prepared.
You know, he's more of a preacher than a debater. Like, this is a preacher kind of stuff. And I understand why people would think that what he's saying here is like a good point. You know, like one of my first things, my first realization is that most of the things that are important in life and the things that you need, they don't train you for. I mean, I don't know if they do it now. I don't think they do. But there should be practical living skills. They should teach you how to balance a checkbook. They should teach you about revolving debt and credit cards. I mean, in high school, like certainly they should do it in high school and college as well. You know, understanding renting and leases and you know, home ownership, like all these things, like all that should be mandatory. There should be, you know, teaching about how to be in a marriage and all these other things, like all the things that are practical. You know, I took a home ec class, which was kind of weirdly mostly dudes in high school. Like it was more boys than girls. And, you know, we learned to make things. Like I learned how to make apple fritters and shit and stuff like that I made at home. You know, it was my first introduction to cooking. And I like doing that course. If all the guys in the class learned to cook stuff, right? So, you know, all these things are valuable. Preparing you for, so anything that when someone talks about that is like, you know, yeah, that makes sense, right? Practical living. But what he's talking about here, let's let him go finish.
Prepared for the forest, for the swamp, for the demons, for the people that will stab you in the back, because you're going to suffer. But I'm going to help you make sure that you can endure it a little bit better so your life will be a little less miserable.
So that kind of makes sense, but you don't teach that way. Like this is one of the difference between the Sajmark teachings and the Christian teachings. Like in Sajmark, everything is worded positively because you have a mind that comes from infinity. Like you have infinite potential in your spiritual evolution to manifest things. You have godlike powers in your ability to manifest and create. Look at all the things that people have created. Think about all the buildings, all the, films, all the artwork, all the books, all the, everything that's out there, our art, everything that people have created. I mean, look at the evolution of sports and the various things that people, look at the evolution of like chess and the various strategies, right? Where somebody who was like Bobby Fischer would get crushed today by a 10-year-old kid because kids know so much more about chess. There's so much like these, prodigies. They have so much more knowledge about chess and different strategies that weren't available back when he was champion, right? All these things, things that people haven't invented yet. And you think about all the things that people have created, that comes from people's thought force. And so you don't want to be focused on the negative. You don't want to have everything be a self-fulfilling prophecy. But, in the Christian tradition, you're born a sinner, and the 10 Commandments are thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. And when you word something in the negative, your subconscious mind doesn't process the word no. And so you're giving yourself a negative suggestion. Thou shalt not kill. You don't hear the not on a subconscious level. So it's bad. Like all those things are bad. A lot of the Christianity stuff and a lot of the Christian stuff and a lot of the conservative stuff is negative, as is the liberal stuff. It's trying to prevent something instead of looking at something as a positive. Like what happens when you endure something difficult? Is it always a negative, or is it sometimes, or always maybe, there's some good thing that came out of it? And so if you're always worried about something going wrong and thinking about this and that, I mean, even if it doesn't, you're miserable the whole time. Like even if everything goes smoothly, the people are constantly, well, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. Well, and if it doesn't happen, the person's already lived that, right? Like let's say you're going on a cruise and you're constantly worried about something bad happening, and or even a plane flight, and you don't crash, right? You land on the ground, but for 6 hours that you're up in the air, you're thinking you're going to crash. You basically experienced that crash without crashing. You had a miserable 6 hours, right?
That's basically what we should teach them in college. Instead we teach them this. If anything scares you, tell me and I'm going to remove it. Seriously, this is what we do in college. If anything dares challenge you, scream with your hands up and say, microaggression, trigger warning, safe space.
And so that's true. That's how these kids are, right? These kids are constantly triggered and, anything that, their emotional state and all that bullshit. And there's weakness because of that. So what he says here is true, and people would think, well, this guy's, getting it done, but he's clearly not. Because, what I've said before is that the right-wing people, they use fear and it creates anger. So the right-wing people are scared of everything. This is how the Fox News is about fear. The left-wing media, the left, the Democrats, they create anger, which leads to fear, right? The anger that leads to fear. So they both are fearful and angry, and they're both regressive and negative. And so the left-wing movement came out of the conservative Christian movement. This idea of making America great again, it wasn't great. It wasn't great for everyone. And the Christians ruled with an iron fist. The conservative Republican Christians ruled with an iron fist for many years. And they had all the money, they had all the power, and they would push back against anything new, right? Even things that came out of the Christian movement, like homeschooling and things like this, they wouldn't allow new things, and they weren't supportive of new things. And so certainly all the organic foods, they're feeding people chemicals. And, back when Trump said, let's make America great again, DDT is good for me. Like they were fucking poisoning people, everything, better living through chemicals and all this other shit, right? And so when these liberal people came in, and some of their ideas were great, true liberalism, some of the things we're all using now. In fact, a lot of right-wing people are eating organic foods that came out of the the liberal movement. And so, there was a reaction because whenever you use force to stifle something, and there's the most fearful people were these conservative Christians that were told the world was ending all the time. Alex Jones used to call them Chicken Little. And all these people that push this fear, and Charlie Kirk pushes the fear of the liberals all the time. And Trump does too. And so, it's the same thing on both sides. You're making it sound like it's only the liberals that do that. But you guys all dwell in fear, right? I mean, the whole thing with the way that the war for Israel and all this shit they was pushing was based on all this fearful religious stuff. And this idea that all of us are supposed to accept the Bible as the word of God, and that you guys are somehow saving everybody, and you're clearly not. Like, most of you guys don't even live as good Christians. Like, Jesus is probably like, yeah, why don't you guys don't go try something else, right? I mean, you know, if Jesus was alive in the way that I understand spiritual people, he can't be happy with the majority of Christians and what they've done with his teachings and his life, right? Anyways, that's the first piece. Okay, so this video clip came up on a short, small video, but I found it in the original video, and I had already talked about this before. I wanted to re-examine something that I missed.
Silver is the new oil, and it says if you don't own silver yet, you're already behind.
You're already behind. Fear. You're already fucked. If you don't got silver now, you're already fucked. Like, if you don't have silver, you're pretty much fucked. You know, this is what I'm talking about.
Collins says that as demand for technology, energy, and industry soars, silver's value is set to surge. The question is, are you ready to profit? This book reveals why silver is the most underrated asset today and how to
he's selling. He's chilling.
Invest before the world catches on. I've read Silver is the New Oil, and you should too. Get it now.
I've read it. It's my book.
Now available on Amazon. Hello, everyone. Very special hour episode for you.
Okay, so he comes down with Erika.
I don't know. All right, so we are taking your questions, and hopefully we'll be able to answer any thoughts that you have.
Great. Do you want to take you choose the first one. I'll pepper in the next one.
All right.
There's a few of them.
Well, this one's easy. How long have you been married, and when did you know it was time to get married?
We've been married since 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Engaged 2020.
So it'll be 4 years.
4 years.
Okay, so it's weird that she wouldn't know how many years they've been married, right? Like 4 years, like, it's not a long time. It's still relatively new. And we could even kind of be in your honeymoon period. But she's like, how long we've been married? Like, you know, especially if, I mean, let's go further here.
We laugh about this because our dates are so messed up because of babies. Meaning, there's so many dates to remember.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
I get all the anniversaries.
Anniversaries, like kids' birth.
Okay, so that's three things. You have two kids, and you have one anniversary. So that's three things to remember, and then each other's birthday. And he didn't like his birthday, but she later cried, you know, which you saw earlier. And, you know, God wouldn't allow another day to go without you. Did I show you? I think I showed you that this time, that little clip. And so, if I didn't show you that the clip came up again, and somebody was crying about, let me see if it does. I'll show it after here if I didn't show it already. But somebody posted it saying, I don't think I showed it, but well, let me go find that now. I did show you that already. I'm feeling much better. I had this migraine. My migraine's gone. I'm making dinner right now. Well, I wasn't a little bit ago. And so it's about 5:30. I'm trying to get the rest of this done, and I'll put this video out earlier on Sunday and then get back into a more normal routine. You know, it's a weird thing with the dates. Like, they're saying they can't remember. Here, 5 days.
Engaged 2020.
So it'll be 4 years.
4 years. We laugh about this because our dates are so messed up because of babies. Meaning, there's so many dates to remember.
Mm-hmm. I know. I get all the anniversaries.
Anniversaries, like kids' birth
May
dates.
14th.
Yeah.
You know, August
all the
23rd.
things.
Okay, there's 5 things to remember as a family. And she herself said, this is your family. Your family is your husband, your kids, and your family are your relatives or something. I forget what word she used. But she said, she was talking to young women about getting married, that your husband and your kids are your family. Of course, you have other things with other people. But, you know, they have a staff of 450 people, and it's like a $2 million, $20 million payroll or more. And, you know, technology people, you can get all kinds of alerts on your phone, right? Things like that. I mean, there's ways to. Like, they're making it sound like so hard to remember that many birthdays. I mean, my ex and I had 6 kids. And, you know, 3 birthdays in May and 2 birthdays in July and, you know, these things. And, you know, it wasn't like some hard, we didn't miss any we didn't miss any things, anniversaries and stuff, whatever. You know, it's not, You know, even when you're overwhelmed and stressed out, you still can remember things like that, right? And as you get older, the kids aren't going to let you forget. They'll start talking about their birthday a month or two ahead of time.
We've been married for
How did you know it was time to get married? I mean,
almost 4 years in
I
May.
proposed and she said yes.
It's a very strange thing, right? It's a very strange dynamic between them. And so there is this clip I saw. I'll show you it. So there's a song here I've never heard before.
So how do I say
Goodbye. My heart will never heal from this. This person writes this, right? Charlie Kirk, Team USA. And so they have these pictures and these moments. He's such a dweeby looking motherfucker, right? But like these moments that they're supposed to be a couple. And so the problem is there's videos of her where she played and she was in a relationship in a music video. And there is a clip that somebody told me about that I did a video about, which was her being on a reality TV show, and she's very flirtatious with a gay dude. And she's, you can see that she's very flirtatious with various people. She's very physical, very touchy-feely. She's like all over Trump and these things. And she could be one of these beta, sex kitten, MK Ultra, whatever. Possibly. Whether she is or not, she's learned how to flirt and, pretend like she's in a relationship. She's learned how to act in these ways. And these things are all staged, right? Like anything with a video camera, these moments that people put on social media to make themselves look like they're real couples and whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, maybe this is real, but she already shows that she could do this without, with basically a complete stranger. And there's a behind the scenes with the video, and she's like hugging the guy and very flirtatious with the guy she's acting with. And so this is how she relates to men, in a very flirtatious, physical way. And so, this doesn't seem like a real couple. Okay, so this is this guy, Max Blumenthal, who, this was a video from the, I'll tell you in a bit when I go back to the small screen. It's some sort of church video, and they do a good interview. I didn't know that the whole thing was up on the live section of the YouTube channel. It's about an hour and 10 minutes. And this guy has, real research, real reporting. Like, of course, he's more of an official story guy, believes in the Trump assassination, some of these other things. But he has a good manner in which he disseminates this information. And, he's more believable than the average person. He's not using big emotion and fear and things. But he has a couple of clips here. I showed you some of these things before. But he's talking about Trump being owned by Israel and some of these other things.
Israeli a deliberate attack on the USS Liberty.
Okay, so this is about, here, let me go back a little bit here.
Behind the guise of debate. And right-wing activists from a group called the Groypers would line up at the microphone to challenge Charlie Kirk from the right on the U.S. relationship with Israel, bringing up things like the Israeli deliberate attack on the USS Liberty, basically a spy ship of the U.S. Navy, around the Suez Crisis in 1967, killing over 60 U.S. sailors. And Charlie Kirk would just shut down the debate immediately. At one point, he actually brought up the fact that Israel allows gay pride parades in Tel Aviv as a point of defending Israel, which, he's not pro-gay in the U.S., so it really exposed him as kind of a phony in front of his own base. And it wasn't popular.
So he lays down this, this journey that Charlie Kirk was on. He talks quite extensively about the amount of money that Charlie Kirk was given, and that he was propped up completely by Israel. This guy also talked about Ben Shapiro and how nobody likes Ben Shapiro. Who watches Ben Shapiro? But he was completely manufactured by Israel, by Israeli money, and that made him have views, right? They have ways of recommending things and getting into the, people like Don Lemons who get, name recognition, whatever goes on with that stuff. but they were completely manufactured. They didn't have an organic rise to whatever they're doing. And Charlie Kirk was, these guys would come in, right-wing people who were against the Israeli parasitic relationship, Israel's parasitic relationship, and would bring up these talking points, and he couldn't handle it because he was getting embarrassed. And he had shut down these debates. Right?
After October 7th, the bottom starts to fall out among people under 35 in the U.S. for supporting Israel. I mean, it wasn't just the genocide. It was, although that was a major factor on the left within the sort of progressive grassroots, but on the right, it was really the spectacle of Netanyahu just dominating the United States and being welcomed as the real leader every time he came to Washington, getting more standing ovations than the president. And
all that kind of stuff, right? And so, whatever happens, the your group of young people are never going to, young people who wake up, when you first wake up to something, and a lot of people who are in college age now and these young people, it spreads. I mean, it was a bit like, for me, it was a big event in 2001. Some people it was like Pizzagate, some other people it's the economy, whatever it is, right? But you have some issue that really bothers you. Like I had another thing with the stuff that happened to Libya in 2011. Some things just, you get into you emotionally more, or just whatever. There's some kind of, it affects you more, you get more attached to it, and it just doesn't go away. Like this is where you realized, oh, we're so fucked, right? We're so, this is our system so fucked and everything's so bad. Everyone's so dishonest and justice never happens. There's no accountability for the wealthy people and they just do what the fuck they want and, whatever. Then when people realize that this is all a sham and all these things that they say and it's not true about you having, equal rights and all these things and all the stuff that goes on and how rigged the system is and it just, you can't fix it and all that stuff. And there's certain issues where just it stings. And like I said before, for all these kids, it's going to be Israel. And that they're never, that element of that. Whatever happens in terms of consciousness changing, the internet and the truth community are having an effect on the way people think about things. And over time, that becomes something, the 100th monkey syndrome, where these young kids have a way of, disseminating information and understanding things, that these old guys are still trying to control it with things that used to work 50 fucking years ago. Netanyahu doesn't, I think he's really sincerely trying or his job is to make everyone hate Israel, right? Make everyone else hate Jewish people. It's like one of those two things. Like either he's really trying or it's like, he's sabotaging the whole thing. But like same thing with Trump, stuff doesn't work anymore. We have videotape, like we have video of shit. Like we can like figure things out. You just can't pretend, tell us that you didn't see what you just saw. Like that shit doesn't work anymore, right? It never worked well, but now it's like it's impossible to deny things that people see and know.
Clearly trying to drive the U.S. into a war with Iran. And Charlie Kirk had to finally address that. And he would swing back and forth. He would make disgusting statements denying famine in Gaza. And then the next thing you know, he's platforming the most popular critics of Israel within the conservative movement. Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, comic Dave Smith, a libertarian anti-Zionist Jewish comedian, was debating on stage at TPUSA's Student Action Summit in Tampa, Florida last July. Megyn Kelly was speculating that, the former Fox News host was speculating that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad asset. And following that summit, Charlie Kirk fell under enormous pressure from the donors who had made him who he was, who had been funding him ever since he founded TPUSA in 2012. Donors like Robert Shillman, who is one of the most...
Okay, so I want to get to the Shillman part. But he gets into these people, Candace Owens mentions all these people by name. That summit that he went away, like he confirms the stuff that Candace Owens was saying. That when he went away to the Hamptons, and they were screaming at him. This is the stuff he came back and he was freaked out and he went on Megyn Kelly and whined about it. And they were yelling at him because like he had taken hundreds of millions of dollars. You don't give people $3-4 million and then start shitting on their points of view. I don't know where he says here, but they started giving him talking points. Let me see if I can find that. We'll get to the talking points. This is the Community Church of Boston YouTube channel. And, you know, I as much as this matters or doesn't matter, a lot of information that confirms things that I've said without, you know, doing the kind of journalistic research that would be more, you know, substantial in proving it, right? Because I don't need that. We can see the patterns. We can see the, you know, we kind of know what's going on here, right?
All of this is something I'd been following closely. And, you know, I was thrilled by the reaction from the crowd at TPUSA to everything that was being said on stage, because it showed there was a rebellion taking place in the last bastion of grassroots support that Israel enjoyed. And I understood that Israel was already throwing as much money as it could at the problem to basically pay influencers. And they were very focused on the, you know, America first, quote unquote, anti-woke influencers. They were flying them all to Israel. We could see it all unfolding. They were trying to buy as many, you know, young, attractive women or black influencers, Latino influencers. It was just like an all-out exploitation fest. The Israeli Foreign Ministry had ponied up $150 million per year for this. And so I knew that the pressure would be coming down on Charlie Kirk and his organization, but I didn't understand the full extent of it until he was killed. After he was killed, Netanyahu comes out and tries to claim Charlie Kirk's name, his legacy.
So we saw this stuff with Candace Owen and all that kind of stuff. And he gets into it at some point. I don't think I have that bookmark, but he talks about how Israel's trying to buy every major media outlet, all those things, because it's, you know, it has no other, you know, it's silly because, you know, it's an older audience and they've lost the internet like they've lost it, which is very clear. And what does that mean? Because Trump is completely owned. Let me see, we get to that here somewhere.
Cut off from alternative media. So I was able to have conversations with some of the figures who knew Charlie Kirk. And they told me that he hated Netanyahu, that he considered Netanyahu a bully, that he was considered him a manipulator, and that when Netanyahu invited him to Israel 2 weeks before his death, as Netanyahu said in one of his videos, many videos about Charlie Kirk's death, Charlie Kirk actually refused. Netanyahu never said if he accepted or not.
You know, so we saw this. This guy doesn't bring it up, but he brings it up a different way, because he does say that how Netanyahu, which I pointed out, came out, and first he was asked on some interview whether they had anything to do with Charlie Kirk's death in a way that was Greta Van you know, that whole thing. But he made a video on his own, which I said was highly suspicious. Again, just put up his own video on his own YouTube channel denying that Israel had anything to do with his death. And why would you be doing that if you didn't do it, right? Because, like, you know, and that either means that so many people think you have some part in it, which is fucked, and or you're responsible, and there's evidence, like you're a legitimate suspect. Like you talked about how crazy you guys are for believing that, you're mentally ill if you believe something like that. But it's clear that, you know, that if you look at all the suspects, Israel is the number one because of all these things. Charlie Kirk is clearly in a shitty position because his show is tanking. And you can see it now. It's tanking now because they don't want to take on the Israeli issue. They're talking about shit no one gives a fuck. All the Charlie Kirk people want to hear about is Charlie Kirk's real killer and this silly story that nobody fucking believes, right? This fucking guy, this furry guy and his transgender boyfriend, and their like bullshit love letters and a rifle that couldn't be assembled and all the fucking idiosyncratic behaviors, all the suspicious shit. Nobody believes the official story. Candace Owens is getting 2 million views and they're getting dick on their channel, right? They're getting like 20,000 views on shitty videos that nobody cares about.
He canceled, according to sources, a plaque that was going to be erected.
Let's go a little bit back further, a little bit here.
Is called to ban the Quran, and he's funded Laura Loomer. And Bob Shillman defunds him. I mean, this was a guy who I'd heard he donated like over $6 million to TPUSA. He canceled, according to sources.
Shillman's such a great fucking name.
a plaque that was going to be erected honoring him inside TPUSA's office complex in Phoenix. So I also learned that Charlie Kirk was being managed on a daily level by a right-wing, Israeli-funded, government-funded rabbi in Israel from the U.S. named Pranhuiti. And there were these small Zoom sessions that Charlie Kirk had to call into with Bill Ackman, a venture capitalist, fanatically anti-Palestinian venture capitalist from Sequoia Capital named Sean McGuire, and Joshua Hammer, who's one of Netanyahu.
So these are all people that Candace Owens was talking about.
His key voices in the media and his editor at large at Newsweek. He's the guy who debated Dave Smith at TPUSA for Israel. And they were explicitly feeding him talking points and telling him what to say because they were afraid of what was going to take place.
So Turning Point USA, these guys, and this sucks really bad. It's nothing. Like it's a sham organization created by, the Israeli money, foreign government money. It's traitorous behavior. And these guys came out, Andrew, whatever his name is, Colvert, the guy who's running the thing now. Somebody left a comment, which I don't think I read this time, but talking about how the guy's moving right into Charlie's seed, probably banging his wife, these things, right? So this is like whatever. But he denied that Charlie received any foreign money and any money from Israel. But it's clearly, coming through these channels. But he was receiving talking points. So this wasn't freedom of speech. They bought the guy, right? The guy gives you $6 million. They give you $100 million. You got a $100 million budget a year, which the money was disappearing and Charlie didn't even know where it was going. He didn't even have a fucking handle on things, right? And the movement's moving away from you and your money's moving in the opposite direction. Your movement's moving one way and the money is moving the other, right? It's like Charlie Kirk was like being pulled between these two things. And now they're still trying to go with the money, but it's already a lost battle. Like this stuff is not getting better. It's going to get worse. And Iran, this guy talked about Iran and interviewed the Iranian president and thinks that there's going to be another war with Iran.
On his upcoming campus tour, which began September 10th at Utah Valley University. And Pranhuiti, his self-appointed Zionist manager, said that Charlie Kirk was pushing back on a lot of the things they were telling him to say, that he had fallen under the influence of the media.
Okay, so we see that, right? So this was the problem. And, if more and more, it looks like you give somebody that much money. If you gave someone $100 million and the guy starts fucking you over, right? I mean, think about this, and you have Mossad, and this guy talks about the extensive spying that Trump has found. They found all these various recording devices that Netanyahu went into some dude's bathroom, his private bathroom, and they swept it and found that Netanyahu would put a fucking recording device in there. I mean, he's got a whole bunch of shit like that. Like, it's well worth watching. Like, just for that. Like, I mean, if it's true, and it's probably, I can't imagine it isn't. And so, this stuff, and that the Mossad was spying more on America than anybody else because they know they're fucked without America. And then Yahoo's been bragging about it and how much he owns Americans and Trump. These private conversations that came out that people were videoing he wasn't aware of and these other things. But, this is how bad it's getting.
Or they're being myopic here. Israel has taken over Trump. And so any pro-Trump content is being managed by Netanyahu's cutouts. Ellison, Barry Weiss. CBS just had a ombudsman installed who's a veteran Israel lobbyist named David Weissman from the Hudson Institute. So pro-Trump is basically Israeli controlled. And that's what this is about. And they're not going to stop there. They're basically trying to retrench control because they have lost the PR battle. They've lost the political battle after October 7th, even though they believe that they've won the military battle.
Okay, so I should have started earlier in that clip, but basically what he was saying was, that the left-wing people, the Democrats, are going after Trump for all this stuff that he's trying to glom on all these media conglomerates, and they think it's all pro-Trump, but they're not, seeing that it's really pro-Netanyahu and pro-Israeli. There's a few more things I got to get to here.
Cool. Kirk strongly warned Trump last June against bombing Iran on Israel's behalf. Charlie was the only person who did that, the source said, recalling how Trump, quote, barked at him in response and angrily shut down the conversation. The source believes that the incident confirmed in Kirk's mind that the President of the United States had fallen under the control of a malign foreign power and was leading his own country into a series of disastrous conflicts. Max, when you spoke with us in June, in the middle of the so-called 12-day war, you said to us at that time, and you said elsewhere, that you think that Trump is afraid of Israel. Since then, since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, you've doubled down on that claim. Can you please explain to our audience again why you say that?
So he's reading from this guy's article. So that's a substantial statement that Charlie Kirk was the only person that pushed back against the Iranian war. He goes on to say, I don't know if he's going to say it here. Let's see if he does.
Well, first of all, those lines you read were corroborated days after I reported them by Vice President J.D. Vance, who was seated in Charlie Kirk's chair hosting his show after his death. He said that Charlie Kirk did go to the White House and lobbied against striking Iran. He didn't have the details I had on Trump, but he probably was there but didn't want to embarrass Trump. But of course Trump was afraid. Of course Trump is completely controlled and cowed and cucked by Netanyahu. That's why Netanyahu, according to Tucker Carlson, someone who's much more connected than I am to Trump world, said that Netanyahu is running around the region bragging about controlling.
Okay, so it's funny they use the word cocked, but he's totally cocked, right? I mean, no, Trump is he's just so owned by Israel. He breaks down things that we see, but he has details and things like that, right? But if Charlie Kirk went in there and said, hey, Trump, we need to stop the war with Iran, and Trump snapped at him, it means that he doesn't have, like Charlie Kirk has influence, because if he turns on him, like if Charlie Kirk came out and said, yeah, Trump's fucking completely owned by Israel. I mean, he can't say that because he's going to lose his base too, right? This is how fucked all these people are, because they can't just come out and say the truth, because they're all, they've already put their credibility behind shit. You got Trump elected, he's going to come out and say Trump's completely a piece of shit too. You can bounce back from that, but then you lose half your audience and all your Israeli money, right? So Charlie Kirk was so fucking screwed. You had this big monthly nut of, yearly nut of $20 million worth of salary and these rallies and shit, and they're trying to sell all this fucking merch, but the real money's coming from Israel. And then if he's an enemy to them and they go after him, I mean, just like he was completely fucked, right? And this is, this clip is entitled Trump is Afraid of Israel, but there's a whole hour and something long thing, which is, if you're interested in these things, it's much easier to listen than Candace Owen. This guy seems to be more responsible in terms of his reporting than the average truther and people, in terms of journalistic kind of whatever it is. I'm not backing this guy as a truther, but as somebody who's clearly been studying this, how Israel owns the American politicians and American media and American president in this case, all of those things. Let me see if I can find that J.D. Vance thing here.
I remember Charlie calling me and saying, I'm really worried. And this was back in the summer when the Iran strikes were sort of first being contemplated. He said, I'm really worried this is going to become another regime change war in the Middle East that we get trapped in. And I said, Charlie, first of all, have some faith here. The President of the United States is not a believer in perpetual war. He knows the mistakes of Iraq and Afghanistan. He doesn't want to repeat them. But Charlie was very clear that he could support Israel. And by the way, he did eventually support the strikes on the nuclear facility while simultaneously saying, no more. This can't become a bigger thing. This can't become
he confirms this in a couple different ways here. But this Max Blumenthal said that he was also against the Iran strikes, this guy here, J.D. Vance. And him as his people, his team of people. It isn't because they care about Iran or care about Palestine or any of these things. It's because they want war with China, right? Because China is, all this stuff that we're he said that all the stuff that Israel was demanding from the United States, our military is depleted. Like, we're vulnerable now, and we can't fight the war with China because we're supporting this stuff with Israel. Like Trump's saying, he gave everything to Netanyahu that Netanyahu asked for. I mean, that's how fucked we are, right? So, like, because China is still a real issue, but Israel is just, let me see if there's any more clips here.
And I should consider...
There's
respond to an attempt on the president's life. And the emergency response vehicles of the Secret Service, which would presumably respond to an attempt on the...
So what they're saying is that Mossad bugged the Secret Service vehicles so they would find out what was going on, where Trump, all these things, right?
President's life. And the Secret Service found them. And I thought, this could be crazy, and I should consider whether I'm just being fed some kind of conjecture, some hearsay. But there's a clear precedent there when in 2019, 3 former senior U.S. officials who had been Trump officials, one of them might have even been John Bolton. No, it wasn't Bolton, but 3 national security officials went to Politico and said that Israel had placed Stingray devices, these are cell phone surveillance devices, in and around the White House to spy on Donald Trump's cell phone communications. The NSA has concluded that Israel is the greatest spying threat to the U.S. In 2017, British former Prime Minister...
This is that story I was saying earlier.
Boris Johnson, in his... Well, he was British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, in his memoir, wrote that Benjamin Netanyahu had used his personal toilet, and afterwards, his security detail found a listening device placed in the bathroom.
Apparently he's shitting out listening devices.
By Netanyahu personally. And you have to start wondering, based on the Politico report, who could get access to the White House to place Stingray devices? It's not just any random Israeli agent. There are people who get access.
So, he goes on to say that, which we all know, that Israel is completely dependent on the United States, and so they're fucking flipping out that they're going to lose it, right? And they're going to lose it at some point because America's collapsing anyway, but in terms of the youth and all these things, it just can't keep on going this way, right? The stuff it's out there, and lots of people know the narrative, and it's out there, and people will start seeing it, whether they want to or not, initially, like right-wing evangelicals and these kids and all these people. I mean, this is where Charlie Kirk was completely fucked. Okay, so I did a voiceover on Iran. Today's Sunday, October 19th, and I just want to finish this part up about Charlie Kirk being fucked. So, if you take $100 million from a criminal organization, hundreds of $1 million, tens of millions of dollars, whatever it is, and they expect you to, they're buying you. They're buying your voice, right? That's what Israel's doing. Israel has been a murderous country since it began in 1945. This whole thing. They've been duplicitous. They have one of the worst, probably the worst, maybe, spy agency. They have a hostile relationship with their best friend, America. They're leeching off of America like America's there. Like it's some piece of shit leech, right, that's doing everything possible to make sure that their survival, which is dependent and contingent on America, giving them money, and then they give shekels back to the people they have to buy, bribe, and all this stuff, right, this whole thing that they've created. And when they're buying somebody and they're panicked about their future, and everything's about surviving an unsurvivable situation in Israel, right? They're fucked. It's doomed. It was doomed from the very beginning. It's inorganic, right? There's lots of evidence that human beings are genetically manipulated and didn't, from, whatever, apes, whatever was going on here, to make some sort of a slave race, like the people we are now, because there's been different types of human beings here from other places and whatever. But what that the planet, and there's a lot of evidence that there's what do they call it, terraforming on planet Earth, accelerated, whatever, alien, whatever it might be, and just the same mistakes that people make. There's always mistakes when something isn't purely divine and purely natural, that comes from a divine, whatever it might be. And so when they decided to create Israel out of Palestine in some contrived UN Rothschild-sponsored bullshit thing, they doomed that whole area, and especially Israel. And they're in a situation where it's never been sustainable. It's only a country's been around since 1945, and it's not sustainable. Right? It's a complete mess over there. And so when they buy somebody like Charlie Kirk, you're bought. You're like, if the mafia buys you, if a criminal organization buys you, and Israel's more murderous than organized crime, right? When some corrupt organization says, "Hey, we're buying your voice," they bought your voice. And Charlie Kirk never really understood that. Like, I guess maybe towards the end he did. And so if they killed him, I'm not justifying any of those things, but it was his own selling his soul to the devil type of thing that made it possible. And so, like, you can see it. Like, that's what happened to the guy. If they, I mean, who knows if, I don't even know the guy was real. Like, I don't know, but the people speak like they know. But in terms of what's watching the show, the most likely suspect is Israel. There's so much evidence that Charlie Kirk had to turn on them, or not even turn on them, just start, just not, like the ridiculous talking points they come up with. I mean, they think we're complete morons over here. They just shameless fucking self-promotion and just, I mean, Netanyahu coming out and saying him and Charlie Kirk were best friends and all that shit. And that, anybody who questions them, it's the far right instead of the far right. Like, people who are right-wing people and left-wing people are all anti-Semitic, hating Israel, and they're delusional and crazy, and they're embracing Hamas. They make Hamas sound like it's a worthy adversary and not their false flag asset that they use to justify the ethnic cleansing and genocide of a people. It's both things. Like, they're genociding them and ethnic cleansing them at the same time, like getting rid of them by killing them, but then getting rid of them in the country, moving them out. So it's a brutal fucking place, and a brutal leadership there, and they don't play around. And Charlie Kirk had to say something, and they just wouldn't tolerate it because they gave him too many shekels, and now he's gone. And so like that, at least in terms of what we're watching the show, that's the most plausible explanation. And then when you have that much money with Erika Kirk and the people at Turning Point, hundreds of millions of dollars, like, that's fucking crazy money. Like, there's tens of millions of dollars of money from donations, and a lot of it's coming from pro-Israeli people. There's a lot of fucking loot there, and that would make people stab you in the back, right? These are not religious people. These are not good people. So these motherfuckers would totally stab him in the back, right? They'll totally fucking shekel him. Like, I'm talking about Turning Point people, and his wife. So it's like the whole thing is so fucking greasy. Anyways, let's move on to the thing with Iran. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little voiceover here to end this thing. First of all, because my wife and I were just talking about this, because I forgot what I said when I originally saw this. And, one of the reasons that, first of all, when he bugged Boris Johnson's bathroom and some of these things, he knows they're going to catch him, right? They know they're going to get caught. And at one point, Netanyahu said, according to Max Blumenthal, that he said Israel is in your phones, right? Because they had put some technology in people's phones, that was being used in the manufacture of all these phones, which God knows what that does. Like, if there's some kind of way that they're spying on everybody or whatever it is, a lot of data that's out there. But they know they're going to get caught, but they're probably doing it because they want these guys to be paranoid, that even behind closed doors, they're not saying certain things. They don't know who's been compromised by Israel. So when that USS Liberty was bombed and when it was torpedoed, and like those 60 American sailors died, so many other ones were maimed. There's like body parts all over the fucking deck, like people's arms and shit. And Israel sent down a note off a helicopter saying, "Can we help you?" And they were giving the helicopter the finger. There's an unarmed vessel, right? You could watch that. There's a good presentation by Al Jazeera. No one else would cover this. And then these guys were disgraced. They didn't want these guys walking around telling their fucking story, right? Because this guy was so owned. But when he was negotiating with the Prime Minister of Israel, LBJ, this is after Kennedy's assassination, there's lots of evidence that Israel's involved in JFK's assassination. Probably why RFK Jr. was on that guy's Rabbi Shmuley, the guy who has a daughter who sells sex toys, kosher sex toys, right? Kosher dildos. And he's such a creepy motherfucker, the Shmuley guy. But Kennedy came out and licked his taint, right? And that was in Israel's time. It was just brutal. RFK Jr. But, LBJ was scared shitless of Israel. And then he realized somebody in his cabinet was leaking information to the Prime Minister of Israel at that time. And so they want these guys to be paranoid. And they're like, we can bug you all we want. We fucking own you. And it's a small little do-nothing country that can't survive without America. It's parasitic. But they're bullying these guys. The guy goes into extensively how Trump is owned by this guy. But on top of it, he interviewed the Prime Minister of Iran, and the guy said, we're going back to war. Like, Israel's not done. And they have weapons they didn't use. They have weapons that were more effective. And Israel was hit a lot worse than they claimed. And so America bombed that so-called nuclear facility, but that job wasn't done correctly, even though Trump said it was obliterated. Like Trump was hoping to, just end it right there. But Israel's pushing for more. And then what they want is American ground troops. They know that they can't fight Iran without, when it goes to ground troops, without American support. And America is like, who's going to want to go to war with Iran? Like, who's going to want to be involved in that? And I feel like, the prediction in the Whispers of the Brighter World, the messages, Whispers of the Brighter World, message under the prophecies, which I've read numerous times, that there's a big event in 2026, and it seems like a nuclear incident. And it could involve Israel, and then that from there, everything falls apart. And then whatever America gets compromised by that, we're being completely played, and the rest of the world looks at Americans as being suckers, right? And just, it's a terrible way to go out, and we're going out that way. That's what it looks like. This talk about Iran is quite extensive, about how, Israel is not done, and they expect America to support them unconditionally, just like they expect Charlie Kirk, to just read their talking points and say everything that, verbatim. And so, so that's all that stuff. All right, let me get to these voiceovers here, or by what voiceover I did with comments. This narrative has been out there in the truth community. Alex Jones would never touch it. Like, Alex Jones was such a shill for Israel. It's where he lost his credibility. And those of us who knew about some of this stuff, it became problematic. For me, I personally didn't like all the hatred that's out there towards Jewish people in general. I have friends, and the guy who started me as a preceptor, and just, he was a Jewish guy. He transcended out of his religion, because he became spiritual, but he was from Jewish ancestry. I have friends that, from childhood friends or whatever, and just people that are good people. My one basketball buddy who still contacts me is Jewish, and his kid's a truther. He sent me this essay his kid wrote a couple weeks back. And so I never felt comfortable with the amount of irrational Jew hate, racist kind of stuff that's out there. And so I didn't like talking about that because I didn't want those people on my channel. And also, you just can't talk about it. I made a video about this about 9/11. I made 3 videos, and all 3 of those were, YouTube blocked those, and, they're now, I kind of redid those videos on my Apocalypse Now channel if you're interested in that. It's a fairly new video. I haven't posted shit on that channel in a while, so it's like, it's five videos in. And, I had some of unique information about, thyroid cancer and how it was more likely a nuclear strike or a handheld nuke or something. Anyways, for those people who are interested in that stuff. But I covered it in that, and I had some guy show up. He was a Jewish guy, and he was trying to, reason with me, like handle me in some way, commenting in some way. I had to block him because there's all that element out there, and they go after people's channels, and they go after your standing on YouTube, all that stuff, all these things, and so this narrative existed, but no one could really talk about it. And if you talked about it, you were talking about it in obscurity because YouTube would bury your channel if it didn't take it away, these kind of things. But now so many people are talking about that, and they're talking about it. And then there's legitimate journalists and people like that, like this guy, Max Blumenthal, are talking about it. And it's just right there. It's kind of too late, and I don't know if people could have stopped it before. But we'll see how this plays out. But it looks like it's heading for disaster. I saw this Muslim guy. I still listen to this Muslim guy occasionally. And I didn't agree with, like you never agree with the people's, point of view of different things. But he knew about things that were related to this ancient biblical and the stuff in the Quran and whatever it is. And he said the Quran has said, I saw about 3 or 4 of his videos years ago. I don't know if he's even still up on YouTube, like an older guy. And he spoke English well, and he had these he talked about the Khazarians and the people from the Caucasus Mountains, all that kind of shit. The truther narratives that there are certain this group, the Khazarians, converted to Judaism because they were stuck between Muslims and Christians, and they thought the only way that they could survive was to become Jewish because they couldn't side with either side or they'd be crushed on the other side. Their country is being attacked from both sides. This whole story out there. If you haven't heard about the Khazarians, you can search that and look for it. But this guy talked about how it says in the Quran that Christians are fine by themselves and Jews are fine by themselves. But when they come together and they work together, they could bring the end of the world, like this kind of thing. So, we'll see how that all plays out. But anyways, I think these comments that I read are kind of funny, so let's get into that. Okay, this is Thursday, October 16th. Probably put this at the end of the video. I got to get a bunch of comments. Probably won't be up until the 18th on Saturday. So a variety of comments, 2 sections of comments I haven't gotten to. But let's just go to the newest section first, and we'll start with the oldest comments and work backwards. I think that's how it's going to go. Because I go from newest to... Anyways. Paul, it said 53:17. Tucker Carlson shamelessly defends Donnie Shekels, Trump over Epstein. Bestie. And in 3 minutes and 17 seconds, the person writes, Paul, this is what I said. Paul, people can just walk up to you, but people can't just walk up to you and grab you by the crotch unless they work for TSA. And I didn't remember saying that, but I found it quite humorous. Somebody wrote, Hilaria does have a talent. She is good for having babies. These are going to get more spiritual. But I'm just starting from wherever I'm starting. I don't believe those babies are hilarious because she's so fake and she's so mentally ill. Like, she's so fucked. She's, like, really messed up. And she does a lot of exercise, but she's always been very skinny. Like, she never puts on weight. She's had 8 kids, and that takes a toll on your body. I mean, the more kids you have, the more it just wrecks your body. And and if you're nursing them and all that stuff, I mean, you have, women's just can't keep up with that kind of, energy level of energy being drained from you. Babies are technically parasites. Like, that's the classification, scientific classification. Maybe that's not true. I heard it. But I think that's what it is. And, they have to feed off their mothers. And if you have 8 kids and all that stuff, and she never gains any weight, and she's always doing dancing and yoga right after having the babies, and she's, like, never gains weight during her pregnancy, like her face doesn't get fat or any of those things, which is highly suspect. And she's she must be in her 40s now. And so 8 kids in 12 years or whatever it is, I don't know how old the oldest one is. But even if is it 6 kids or 8, I don't know. It's a shit ton of kids. And so, for her to, your body wears out like it's just, I mean, as somebody that slight, she's a very small person. And also, pregnancy makes you crazy with the hormones, and she's crazy without the hormones. So, but like it's, that wears on your knees and all that kind of stuff, right? And so I think that they do surrogates and then she puts out a baby thing. I mean, that would be my best guess. It's hard to believe those kids are hers for all those reasons. And then this person wrote, 2820 in the video, Erika and Trump fail big at Charlie Memorial Ceremony. Alec and Hilaria are being bullied. Notice how this person didn't say anything about Hilaria. And he says this, dude, will you cut Erika some slack? What the fuck is wrong with you? Well, will you cut me some slack? Right? As long as we're handing out slack. As long as we're handing out slack. I got another comment from that guy. It's a few comments from here. There was like some space in between them. But why should I cut her slack and not Hilaria Baldwin? You're not complaining about me mocking Hilaria Baldwin, which, I mean, that's, so you don't have a problem with mocking, just that you're in love with Erika, aren't you? Is she your girlfriend? And so this person said, I am real serious follower of real Jesus Christ, and this is all counterfeit kingdom crap. It's true, I have a seriously hard time with your using the F-bombs. No reason to put that line in there. But you're not wrong about this fake God, Christianity, patriotism, liberty. It's all very twisted, sick, and most importantly, beyond unbiblical. So you need to drop that stuff about me swearing, right? Again, like I don't care, but why do that? When you're talking about blasphemy, the fake Christianity, patriotism bullshit thing is blasphemy. It's far worse than swearing, right? If you were, swearing doesn't even factor into that thing. So, like, you're upset about both of these things. Cut me some slack. Their church has been completely taken over by wolves, predators, Freemasons, new apocalyptic, what? I don't even know. Apostolic Reformation, Seven Mountain Mandate, and fake Christianity tyrants take over society with one world government, one financial, this all stuff. God, please help us endure to really follow you in truth and in spirit with discernment. You're not getting over that F-bomb thing. And this person, this is one I really want to respond to. So this is with Erika and Trump fails, Charlie's big ceremony, Alec and Hilaria. You're wrong about Jesus. Please read the book of John. You said Jesus was not advanced. He was Almighty God in all caps, and then in regular lowercase, and then flesh in caps. He was the Almighty in the flesh. I was raised Jewish and became a born-again believer 40 years ago. These politicians on the right are religious like the Pharisees who turned over Jesus to Rome to be crucified, turned Jesus over to Rome to be crucified. Jesus is not spiritual. He is a God, period. And God, period is spelled out. God, period is capitalized. He is the truth, the way, and the life, capitalized. The people in this church are deceived and don't know the Bible. We must not be religious, but must be born again like a child, humble. Okay, so this person was also the same person that had a problem with me swearing. So it's the same person writing long comments. And I didn't notice that at first. There's one more comment I want to respond to that goes with that. Let me see if I find that. So this person says, here, let me make this bigger. To the same video, dude, you think you're more advanced than Jesus, the kindergartner, but you just mocked and sneered at an unlikable person. Nah, not buying your BS. Okay. Sure, great. I'm not buying your BS either. We're equal. the other person started off like this. These are two women. Based on the name, it could be anybody. You're wrong about Jesus. Please read the book of John. Okay, so I want to address both these things, both these comments, right? And so I didn't say I was more advanced than Jesus. Those words never came out of my mouth. And I called Jesus a first grader, and people who followed the religion kindergartners, because, that's my understanding of it. But these people, writing me these comments, their authority for truth, their authority for this belief is the Bible and their Christian indoctrination. My authority is not the Bible. I've already talked about what I believe the Bible to be, talked about the Old Testament, I've talked about these things. And the teachings and things that I talk about here are more sophisticated than things that are in the Bible. And like I said, a minister used to come here and listen to my interpretation of some of these biblical things, but also talking about God in general, because it's more advanced. And it's not because I cracked some kind of code. I was gifted all this, including the knowledge and the experience of the Sagemark system, which is a better system. And so in that system and in the literature, there is a method in which you obtain spiritual advancement, right? You do a spiritual practice. You meditate an hour in the morning, thinking about the divinity within your heart. You do a half-hour cleaning at night. You pray for 15 minutes at 9 p.m. for all the people in the world to come to spirituality. And then you pray while you're going to sleep. And so that takes about 45 minutes, something like that, 150 minutes a day. And you also get these individual sittings, which I provide on the Gratefullness Meditation channel. But I used to get them from preceptors, and then there are these gatherings where there are multiple group meditations, and everybody can meditate together on Sundays, and transmission and cleaning is done where deeper level grossness and some scars come out of your heart, and there is transmission given. And so that is the practice of the Sagemark system. Very simple. And then there's teachings about the practice, and you get better and better at meditating, and your heart gets cleaner and cleaner, and your heart expands more and more, and you become more loving, right? There's the things that happen. And so aside from that, there was a discovery by the second master of the system, and there was the spiritual journey, or yatra. And there were these 13 major spiritual points. There's a lot of various spiritual points in your system, and power points like the chakras, but only a few of the spiritual points, the yatra points, coincide with the chakra, because those are power points. And this system's not about power, right? It's not about miracles. It's not about power. It's not about any of these things. It's not about knowledge. And so it's about spiritual condition and spiritual approach. And the spiritual condition is how well you live without making spiritual grossness, and, connecting with God and doing God's bidding and these things. And those things all coincide with the spiritual approach, which is the movement of your soul through these various points. And so your soul starts off in point 1 towards the bottom of your rib, a couple fingers across from your sternum. And then it's the earth point, and that's where pretty much everybody's soul is. You could have moved some of the yatra points in a previous life, but most people start off there at what's called the earth point. And it takes 45 years of self-effort to go from the first point to the second point, moving across to the right side of your chest, and then back to the left upper portion of your chest is the fire point, which the second point is the soul point. And the third point is the fire point. There's a water point, and then there's a air point, which is in the base of your throat. And that is pretty much ignored because it's a lot of a person getting in contact with that point will be overwhelmed with emotions. And then you go up to the third eye, which is the sixth point, which is again a power point. So it's skirted by. You don't spend much time there in the spiritual journey. You move up to the seventh point, and that's the point in which people manifest their whatever ideas and things that you bring into reality that started the mind. Go to that from that point to the first point in the heart, and that's that's how people create things. But when your soul moves up to that point, you're in the mind region. The first region's the heart region, and then you go through these various points. The next 5 points, and then there's 3 points in the back of your head, ending at the base of your skull, and that's the central region where you've reached your spiritual center, and God exists in the center. So that's what I believe, right? My authority is this book and this theory and this practice, right? That's my authority. And, not that I discount everything in the Bible, and that's the difference between me and you. Like, you have to say everything that I believe is horseshit, because that's what your indoctrination and your religion teaches. But the Bible is part of it. All these various spiritual masters, Jesus is according to the teachings of the system, intercommuned with the second master of the system. He was put in charge of this point too. He is in charge of that spiritual point. And he now works for this system. And so you can believe that or not. Like, I don't care if you do. It's not my, I don't expect you to, right? You have no reference point. It just sounds maybe like crazy, whatever to you. That's fine. Like, I don't care. Of course you're going to think that way. Before I started doing the system, I would have thought it that way. So I'm not blaming anybody for that. But I've had practical experience of these things. And so according to the system, Jesus died at point 2, which is 45 years of spiritual, it takes 45 years, even though he did it in a shorter period of time. It can be done, and these things can be done in shorter periods of time. But he went from the first point to the second point, which almost nobody does, and especially by self-effort. He might have received some help in his spiritual journey when he went to India. I'm sure he did. But either way, that's a significant achievement. And in the Sajmark system, it is, through the power of the transmission, these things, you're able to move through these points, which take like 1,000,000-something years to go through. I mean, it's like trillions of years, I think, in terms of self-effort, because 45 times 45 at each one of these spiritual points. Now, because of the nature of the system, the Sajmark system, it's like a Hail Mary because things are going south and, people aren't evolving spiritually, that this thing was gifted. And people were pushed up into the mind region, sometimes only after a few years of spiritual practice. But, you can't equate that to what Jesus did in his own, whatever he did personally. And, Jesus's life and who he was as a person, that was 2,000 years ago, right? I mean, over 2,000 years ago. And so there's an imaginary Jesus and the Jesus that the Bible's created, fictional bullshit in the Bible, that's not, accurate to his life. They edited some things out. Some things, it was written by his disciples who, had their own spiritual approach and their own understanding of the teaching. So it certainly isn't the Word of God. It's not that great a book. It's not that evolved, and there's more things out there. It's all you know, and you've been told it's the only book of God. And if you do anything else, you're going to hell. And so, of course, people who are believing that are kind of screwed, right? You're locked into that, right? And, that is whatever it is. But in terms of spiritual approach and according to the Sajmark teachings and, experiences and understanding various people who made it into the mind region, and some people made it into the central region. And some of those people fell afterwards. Some of the people, I knew people who were in the mind region who were like just assholes. And maybe it was hard because like they're getting that much spiritual evolution in a short period of time. Like, I don't know where I am spiritually. I know I was at least moved up to point 2 when I was made a preceptor, and I had a very profound experience. I went through really tough cleaning, really brutal. And then I was made a preceptor, and in the Sajmark system, the second point is charged with energy, so you can give sittings, and it was like this blissful experience. I didn't even know what was going on. And I met with this guy from Canada, this guy Don Savarin, and he told me that was, I said, what was that feeling at the end, at the very end of the sitting? And he said, well, that was when he put a little bit drop of spiritual power into your point 2. And I was like, oh, that felt amazing. He was like, yeah, this. And so, I had some experience of this, right? And that was, back in 1995, and I assume that I evolved since then, right? And so that doesn't mean people aren't assholes or they don't have, issues in their personality or even, I mean, some of the people who are spiritual saints also can be very grumpy and, can come off. I mean, everyone has a human side. So you don't get the human side because they edited that out. You don't get Jesus's human side from the Bible. You don't see him as a human being because they scrubbed all that shit and they took some of his his stories are from other traditions, other religions, and other spiritual. You know, I mean, they're all it's a group of teachings both from the Bible and in the New Testament that are, some of those things are taken from other spiritual religions, other people's experiences, other people's stories, and so it's just a mashup of a bunch of different things. So there's no way to compare oneself to any of these higher developed souls from the past, and being a person Saj Marg where a lot of what you're doing is accelerated by the system. It's not like a fucking competition. It's not like a black belt or some shit like that, right? Like you are whatever you are, right? When you're spiritual, you are whatever you are. In terms of there's no bullshit in spirituality. You can bullshit your way into a job. You can con people into believing something that you're not. Remember that story, Catch Me If You Can, about that kid who was forging all these documents. He made himself into a pilot. He made himself into a doctor by getting all the documentation and stuff, and he was able to forge all these things. It's a true story. He was running some hospital ward with zero medical experiences. He's like banging the nurses and stuff. He's like, it's kind of a funny movie, but you can bullshit yourself on the material level, and you can pretend you're something you're not. But on the spiritual level, you are whatever you are, and you are wherever you are. So, but I never made a claim about Jesus in terms of like I'm competitive with him, and I'm saying like I'm some kind of spiritual master, because I clearly am not. Right? I'm not. I'm not into helping people the same way he was and other people were. And again, we have a fictional version of Jesus, right? We don't know what's true or not. But the teachings, the information that I provide here, which most of it comes from the Saj Mark system, some of it comes from my own spiritual experiences through that system, but it's more sophisticated knowledge, and it's a better interpretation of the Bible. And you can see it or not, but it is, right? It's, you've been handed a big load of shit from your indoctrination, just like I was. I grew up Catholic, and it's not true. The stuff about him being the only Son of God, not true. Him being able to die for your sins, not true. And a bunch of other shit in there is not true. The Old Testament's a horrible book and shouldn't be, thought about as a religious text at all, because that's not God who they're calling God. Whoever they're calling God is a demon and not God in that thing. So all these things are accurate. And if you think about it, beyond your indoctrination, it's easy to see. It's easy to see from people who have gone through come out the other side of Christianity and aren't into it. And it's easy for people coming from something else to see it as well. But, it's important to know, just because you think the Bible's the Word of God doesn't mean the rest of us who don't have to submit to your bullshit. And that's the problem with Christians and Trump and fucking Charlie Kirk and all these motherfuckers. That he believes in the biblical land rights. Who gives a shit? I don't believe in the biblical land rights, right? The Palestinian people don't believe in the biblical land rights. You can't just take their land because you think the Bible is some fucking authority when it's not, right? It's not an authority. Like, just like my book isn't an authority for you. Like, I believe in, my teachings and my Saj Mark books and the practice and these things, but I'm not expecting you guys to submit to what I believe, right? I share what I believe, and if you guys, benefit from that, great. If not, who gives a shit? Like, that's fine too, right? I'm just putting the information out there, but I don't expect you guys to submit to my teachings as an authority, so why should we submit to yours? Like, it's just immature and myopic, it's narcissistic. That's why when you guys write comments on my channel about biblical comments, I delete them. I think somebody did that later on here. We'll see. All right, so let's get back to the other stuff here. This person writes, I told a Trump supporter today that 60,000 people died in Gaza, and they didn't believe me. They proceeded to say how great Trump was for releasing the 200 hostages. I was thinking about this 60,000 number versus the 600,000 that we're hearing. And I don't know how you take a city that's that small with that little area. You prevent water and fucking food and things from getting in there, medical supplies, and you bomb 80% of it where the people don't have anywhere to go, and it's only 60,000 people dead when there's 2 million people there. I would think it's probably around 600,000. And I don't know how many people have died from starvation or collateral damage or injuries or any of these things from lack of water and just the stress of it, right? And so, fuck these guys. But it's probably, the 600,000 is a much more accurate. So here's this guy. This is the other guy, the guy that said the thing about Erika. Dude, what did Erika ever do to you to deserve your tormenting her like this? She's faking and lying. It's not what she's doing to me. It's what she's doing to dumb fucks like you by faking and lying and doing all that bullshit that she does, right? This person, serious question, why always using Jesus Christ as a curse word? I know it's pretty regular, so just curious. Yeah, I don't think about swearing, right? I don't purposely do it. Like, I have to purposely stop myself from doing it. Like, I got in the habit when I was a kid. And I think I've been saying Jesus Christ a lot because I'm dealing with Christian stuff a lot more with Charlie Kirk and these other people. And so, Jesus is on my mind. It's also, it's like a thing to them, like, they're doing fake Jesus stuff. And so, but it's a habit that wasn't there, like 6 months ago. But, nobody thinks about swearing. Like, if you've got to think about it, then you're doing it poorly. And then I said this, the 21, 30-minute mark of the Erika Trump, big fail video. Shekel-driven hate. And the person wrote, I'm seriously impressed. And so I came up with a shekel-driven hate, and I guess I don't remember that, but it's kind of funny. This is a question. These are some things from the other day. And this person writes, anyway, this is 2 comments. I got to go back to the first one. So the person writes this, what's with all the profanity? What about the Kin Clement prophecies about Trump? That's what I'm still sure about Trump. That's why I'm still sure about Trump. And people fucking hammered this person. Got a bunch of comments. And then the person responded to somebody else. That's not it. The person responded to somebody else and said, anyway, I'm out. Too much profanity and hateful spirits on this channel. Yuck. Okay. See ya. And then there's this one. He's a she and she's a he. Look at the damn jawline. And so that was to Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. And, Jared Kushner does look effeminate, and Ivanka Trump could certainly be a guy. But this person wrote it in cap letters. He's a she and she's a he. Look at the damn jawline. Like all angry. Like we're not all getting it. It's like, yeah, they might be, it could be. But it's not a definite. It's not something you know for sure. And so, it's just a shit show out there. And this one is Tucker Carlson shamelessly defends Donnie Shekels Trump over Epstein bestie. Paul, not to be crude, but the description of the cleaning makes it sound a bit like a spiritual throwing up of sorts. If that's so, then I imagine it's followed by a similar kind of relief that relieves just how unwell or less well someone is prior to the experience. Or maybe I'm just off base regardless. Thanks for that. It's certainly an interesting share. So I was talking about the cleaning process in the Sajmark system. Okay, so in ancient India, ancient India had some of the most sophisticated inventions and discoveries, mathematical discoveries. The discovery of zero happened in ancient India. All these spiritual discoveries that were there, the Vedas, yogic discoveries. And these things, some of this discovery of the soul made it into other religions, but they didn't take the other things, like knowledge of past lives, right? The people who first had the idea were given the divine inspiration that we had a soul, also were given this information about past lives and these other things, right? And whatever Jesus knew about this and whatever was discussed at that time in, the Middle East area in Israel, which is Bethlehem or wherever it is, right? They edited it out of the Bible. So whatever Jesus knew and said, whatever was known by the local people, because, again, some of this was done by white Anglo-Saxon people, Italians and people in England and these other countries in Europe that decided that they wanted to honed this message to where it gave them the maximum power and control over the people, over their flock. And they didn't let the people read the Bible, and they edited out things that didn't suit their worldview and their power system, and having past lives and future lives is not as good for them as having a one-off and going to either heaven or hell. When they were the gatekeepers between you and going to hell or heaven, you were a lot more motivated to do their practice and do their, not practice, but do their religion. And so that's where all that bullshit comes from. The idea that Jesus is the only Son of God, even though he talks about us all being children from God. In the creation story, God created us all. So God's father to everybody, according to their own bullshit, right? But in this idea of the past lives and things, is this idea of samskaras. People know about karma, but samskaras is a much better teaching, and it actually explains quite a bit. And what samskaras are is that there are impressions you get during your life, and they form something that becomes like a spiritual grossness, something in your heart, like grooves in a record. It's your data collection system. This is your external hard drive or your internal hard drive, and you're storing experiences, and experiences that are done without the idea that God is doing them with you are things that you have to have future experiences because of them, right? And anything that forms a deep impression, any kind of trauma, any kind of addiction, anything that's, that you really think, the more you think about something that has hatred or anger, has power and force in it, forms these heavy-duty samskaras, which have to be cleaned out through a natural process called bhog, which sort of translates to experience. Bhog, B-H-O-G. This is an old Sanskrit word. And so when you experience one of these samskaras, impressions coming up, then bhog could be like having kids, or bhog could be getting married, or bhog could be, getting a broken leg, or, bhog could be getting shot or getting sick, or, any number of good and bad things. It could be, becoming an alcoholic, right? Because you died as an addict. You didn't get rid of that impression. And so maybe through 12-step treatment and some other work, you're able to break your addiction. And so you die, and next life you don't have to be an addict again. But maybe you were an addict for 4 lives, and you kept on coming back and reliving those experiences. And so the Sajmarg system, again, this is a system that's almost like it's a Hail Mary system for human beings that just keep on going in the wrong direction. And so, like, it's a last-ditch effort to save this whatever we are, experiment or whatever you want to call us. And so this cleaning process can be done in group meditations by the master of the system and these individual sittings, and by the person themselves every night for a half hour and doing this cleaning process. Now, the cleaning process doesn't work if you're not doing the whole system. And it doesn't work if you're mixing it with other things. So it's not something like, if I tell you how to do it, this is, not something to be played with. There's all these new age dopes out there, and they think they know more. It's a lot of this crap is they've taken ancient teachings, Vedic teachings, and teachings from around the world and made them into some new age Oprah Winfrey, how to live your best life bullshit thing. And it's, it's fake, and it doesn't have any power behind it. And, if anything, it does damage. It certainly doesn't help people, at least, on a long-term basis, maybe initially. And so that's the kind of shit you got to avoid, where you think you know more and you can modernize the system for the needs of the modern-day individual, this stuff. There's specific practices. If it's a good practice, it needs to be done the way it's prescribed. It also shows a sense of discipline and a cooperation where you don't think you know more and you're going to fucking run things and shit like that people do. And so when I talk about these things, you can do them on the Gratefullness meditation channel, and I give explicit directions about how they're supposed to be done. And it's a spiritual discipline. You're not supposed to mix it with other things and think some of these other things are the same, because they might sound similar, but they're not. And so it's got to be done in terms of like it's a complete holistic system where there's nothing to be added. It's it's simple, but it's complete. It doesn't need any sort of variations or any sort of you making it your way or doing it your way, right? But I explain all this stuff on the Gratefullness meditation channel about the Mark system. But in terms of the cleaning, this person who said it was like throwing up, and it's like, well, it's not something where you have to look at the grossness. When a preceptor is cleaning grossness, they just look for things that are blocking a person's spiritual growth, and you might get an idea. You might see something. You might get a sense of what it is. You might sense where it comes from, but you just ignore it. It's not important. And certainly for yourself, you don't want to do that. I went through a really hard cleaning for like 3 to 4 months. I mean, really for, the whole beginning practice. I had been practicing for like 20 years, and I went through this deep cleaning. And it would, after when I came out the other side, I was just like a different person. I was happier. I was making more serotonin, more relaxed. And I had this deep bitterness to God, and it came out, and, through a past life experience and some other things. And, I didn't necessarily need that to know that. I think it was helpful. But usually it's just better that you don't. Like in this case, it was just such a big cleaning, and I felt restlessness and like this resentment, and it was just growing. It was just there, and I was sick and worn out, and I was going through a divorce, and things had gone south. It was just a bad fucking time. And when it all came to a head. But it was something that had plagued me through not only this life, but previous lives. And when it was cleaned off, I just, jumped forward, leaped forward. This YouTube channel took off. Things happened. My life changed dramatically. And so for the better. And so it's not about that, but that was a side effect. But spiritually, I was so much better off. But other than something like that, you don't need to know. In fact, if you do know, you run the risk of, like, let's say you're doing your nighttime cleaning and you have a thought about something during the day because you're cleaning off the day's impressions, and you start thinking about that more and more. And instead of cleaning it away, you're adding to it by the power of your mind, right? Because people's minds we have an infinite ability to create things, especially our own internal universe. And so you're supposed to be always looking towards the positive, which is God, and then removing anything that's not God, right? So you're not focusing on what you're removing. You're not thinking about it as something like there's a relief to getting cleaned out, but you're not thinking about it in that way. It's not like some physical thing that's like you have something bad in your body and you're removing it. It's something that's there. You're not focused on that. You're focused on the divinity within you, and then the idea of the cleaning is there to allow the divinity to shine through and remove anything that's blocking that connection. And I can say, when you do it right, the system is incredibly effective. Anyways, so that wraps up all the comments. I suppose that this will be at the end of a video, and I'll do the sign off when I, put that video together.